Alright, time for another draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com also, but no one will debate these subjects, the physics subjects. So I do have a bunch of 5-minute videos, and I'll put some of these longer videos on some of these older concepts like Stern-Gerlach and whatnot also on that page, but there really isn't anyone who can counter-argue anything I'm saying. Obviously they can't do it, or they would do it, because yeah, that's part of the fun of being human almost, is argument, defending against the bad guys, and they don't want to participate in the fun because they're going to lose that war, frankly. They're going to lose the battles and the war. So anyway, the Brozo clan, yeah, a bunch of inbreds, cult of morons, just keeps doing videos for which there is nothing, there's no logical foundation, no evidence that indicates these are the way you test something. This is how you find out the truth. So I've pointed out that Joule was made famous not because he was a great theoretical physicist. He wasn't even a physicist. He was famous for trying to devise, spending years really working at it, to find a way to measure energy clean, okay, without there being all of these little problems, okay, then creating a measurement device that doesn't care how fast something happens, doesn't care about all this, whether there's atmosphere or this or that, all this stuff. You have to all these variables, friction mainly, and heat losses, and so he wanted to devise a way to measure it. And what he found is that, well, the real trick is to try to convert everything into heat, and then just measure the heat, and that's what he was famous for. And the real point is that he's famous for it because it's a challenging thing to do, is to devise these ways to measure something's absolute true energy, because it does matter how fast something happens, and it does matter how heavy something is, and it does matter how much friction, all kinds of stuff matters. And these buffoons don't care about that fact. They just don't care about the physics at all. And again, they won't man up and make their little mocking videos naming the people who they're mocking, which is Galileo, Descartes, and Newton. And they won't point out how, gee, why are they so revered when they miss something so obvious? That kind of thing. They don't have the balls to do that. Frankly, they're, if they have any testicles, they look like ovaries. But anyway, so the Ian Gosling has made this stupid kinetic energy is king video, okay, based on crappy theory. I mean, just completely no explanation of exactly what his theory of measurement is here, how he's actually, what he's doing, what's physically happening in the experiment. All right, and so it's just junk. And the other players, in spite of me pointing out that their videos are lies, they haven't changed anything. So for 3 weeks, the liar Falwell has left a video up where he got the measurement wrong. The simple thing, he was just supposed to lift something 4 times as high, and he lifted it 8 times as high instead. And it was a simple experiment, just measuring how long a pendulum swings. And he got his 1.4 result, okay, magically. And obviously, if he changes that 8 times the height to 4 times the height, that 0.4 is going to disappear entirely. I know it, he knows it, and he just leaves the live video up. And that's it. I mean, there's no, what else can you say except, gee, what a corrupt, lying sack of shit. I haven't played this newer video. If half the mass achieved 2x the velocity, so let's understand, none of these experiments are about achieving velocity. They're all about accelerations. They're either accelerating or decelerating. None of them are traveling at a constant velocity. So they can't even figure that part out. that gravity doesn't move you at a constant velocity. It moves you at a constantly changing velocity. All right. And then this Despar liar character did this garbage experiment, simple kinetic energy experiment. Simply stupid, frankly, okay, in the sense that he doesn't understand that this arc and this arc are completely different. And you can't measure the velocity here and then claim it's the same velocity out here. Yeah, no, it's not the same velocity. So a big lie premising the video as if this is actually measuring energy when clearly it's not a fair test between the two objects. They just couldn't care less. All right. Rubber band one, I don't know yet. Okay, it's not exactly pretty as an experiment, but whatever. We'll see. I mean, the numbers don't make any sense, so that's the bottom line. In some sense, it's positive in the sense they're actually admitting that twice the compression of a rubber band is twice the velocity. So then they have to explain how it's 4 times the energy, even though it's only twice the compression. Because that's not Hooke's law at all, that's for sure. All right, so maybe they'll mock Hooke also. Eventually, maybe, like I said, if they had any integrity, they would be pointing out how this new modern physics is so well proven and it's so obvious. Then why didn't all these ancient physicists, why didn't they see it? They must be liars and cheaters not to have seen it. It's so obvious, that it, 5 times as fast is 25 times as much fuel. I mean, it's so obvious that, yes, you always use 25 times the fuel to go 5 times faster. Anyway, so that's the context. I don't know if I'll bother playing the moron's video. I mean, he really doesn't deserve it. He's such an asshole. So I'll just explain it. And, how it just fails again to meet any criteria of being thought out, and respecting all of the facts that surround any experiment you're going to do in terms of what kind of variables you have to account for. So it's, there's just no theory here. So both him and Despar think tipping something over is a good way of figuring out how much energy something has. So you bang something into it and you tip the object over, and if it achieves what you're really creating, which is the gravitational imbalance. That is, you put more weight on one side than the other side and it tips over, it falls. But what are you actually doing when you're doing this experiment? So the Despar one fails because, he compared 2 arcs. One that hits here, that's the extent of its arc, and the other one has an arc that goes much further, so obviously it has a higher percentage of its energy at this location, a much higher percentage. So if it was going 10 miles an hour here, it's still going 8 here. Where if this was going 5 miles an hour, let's say, it's going 4 here. It's almost lost all of its energy. So it's hardly a fair comparison. Useless, really. So it's just for deception purposes. That's all these people are intend to do, is to deceive people. Then they prove it by not acknowledging when they've made catastrophic thought errors in their analysis. So what Gosling has done is put a hinge on here, okay, to, enhance the tipping. Yeah, likely to prevent it from sliding, but, that's really not an issue. If you hit something high enough, it's not going to slide. So you could just eliminate, okay, you could just say, let's not even bother looking at this part for now. Let's just look at what the test would be if you were just lifting the hinge. And so you could put a bar on the hinge and hit the bar. Well, what are you doing? Well, you're going to have to lift this mass, okay, up. Okay, that's essentially what you're going to do. And you have to get its center of gravity. That is, you have to get more of the mass on that side than on this side of the pivot. And for it to tip, for it to keep going. And so the real question is this, what's this total mass? And there'll be a percentage of that mass that you have to actually lift in gravity. And so as I've pointed out, he's sort of making my point for me. Gravity is a time-dependent force. And any idiot could understand that if I lifted this really slowly, that is, if I pushed on it with my finger really slowly and just pushed it up, pushed it up, pushed it up, I would be taking a lot more time moving the hinge. All right, be a lot more work, pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing against gravity. So gravity is a constant force, okay, constantly accelerating. So all of that extra energy, pushing, 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 pushing. Right, and I wouldn't have any overflow energy. So if I push it slow, I'm certainly not going to have any circumstance where it's got extra momentum and it swings right past the point. That certainly isn't going to happen. And so right there you can sort of understand that, yes, if you're moving something slowly, it's going to be more work. Now the simple truth is that it's completely proportional to the time. Twice the time is twice the energy. So twice the velocity. Obviously, if I lift this at twice the velocity, I'm going to do half the amount of work. Okay, it's just the fact. And if I do it at 3 times the velocity, it's 3 times less work, and 4 times the velocity, 4 times less work, until I get to some point where I'm going faster than I need to. That is, I'm overshooting, the tipping point. But the idea is you could just put little explosives under here and you'll get the same result, in the sense is that the quicker you can move it, the less work you'll need to do. And the slower it moves, the more work you can do. So you could move these explosives to different locations, leverage-wise, creating different velocities, and the outcomes would be perfectly consistent with the idea that all you're really doing is explaining that if you lift a mass fast, you do less work against gravity than if you lift the mass really slow. Okay, you take your time, it'll be more work. If you take 4 seconds to lift it, it'll be 4 times as much gravity you fought in getting it from here, point A to point B. It's that simple. I mean, it really is that simple. You can experience it yourself. Just find something on the ground that weighs a mass and then lift it slowly and just sit there and figure to yourself, count how much work you're doing, holding the same weight, pushing, 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 and then lift it quickly and realize, oh yeah, that was a lot less calories. So it's a simple argument. It's been made over and over. Now he doesn't have to believe that, I guess. I mean, he has to if he's fair and reasonable and cares about science. He has to realize that, yeah, that's the difference here. So I'm going to compare 2 things that have different velocities. So I have a mass and a velocity. All right, and I have one that's 1 mass and 2 velocity, and I have one that's 2 mass and 1 velocity. Obviously, the thing with 1 velocity can't move it as fast as the thing with 2 velocity. So the thing with 2 velocity has the advantage that it will get it moving quicker. It will be in the gravity. It'll be fighting gravity less time, and it's twice. It's that much because it's a whole extra unit of time. And it's the units of time that's the secret to gravity. Gravity is this much per a unit of time. And it just, every time you do that same unit of time, you have that same unit of amount of force that you're fighting. The force is completely time controlled. So obviously you get different results. The 2 things can't do the work in the same way. And the advantage is when you're lifting against gravity, speed matters. That's the key point. And once you know that, then you can understand this experiment. So, even with just weight, even just lifting this hinge, against gravity, that is, you're going to move the hinge up to some location. So you've lifted that mass, that distance. And then when you add the weight of the wood, the big giant piece of wood on there, you can understand that, yes, you have to lift a certain percentage of this mass. You'll have to lift up a certain distance to be able to get it to tip. And the fact is the faster you lift it, the less work you'll have to do. And the slower you lift it, the more work you'll have to do. Now, these experiments do have a lot of other variables. You have to ask yourself, what happens when you smash a mass in at different velocities into a piece of wood? Does it always dent the same way? I mean, does it matter how fast I hit the piece of wood? Now, I could argue that obviously karate guys kind of demonstrate that if you can focus the energy to a smaller surface area and apply it quickly, that you can in fact rip through the fibers of the wood very easily, break them, snap them, and that you can do a lot less work to cut the wood in half that way. So we already know that wood has some of these elastic features where it will give and then break all at once. And if you don't have enough speed to go past the giving point, then you're just going to end up wasting the energy as a oscillation stuck inside the wood, a displacement that's not necessarily elastic in that it'll just heat the wood. So, you know, these are real variables. They don't have any science defending what they're saying, that they know it's a fair fight, that the impact gets into the wood in the same way no matter what speed the object hits the wood with. Now, you know, I don't think so. Now, obviously this is what's ruining the experiment, okay? The fact that they're not accounting for the speed at which they're moving the mass. But all these other details are important, and they just couldn't care less. You know, obviously part of it is you don't want stuff bouncing. You know, how much energy bounces back is also part of recognizing that you haven't absorbed the energy if you have a rebound. The rebound means the energy didn't get in. All right, they don't even account for those kind of facts. So I could go to a video online where they, you know, they swing a steel ball into a piece of wood, and then they take a rubberized one and bang it into the wood, and the rubberized one does a better job of knocking the piece of wood over. But you could argue, yeah, well, that's all because it doesn't disturb the surface. The rubber absorbs the energy and then pushes it, and it doesn't break anything, it doesn't lose any energy to heat, where this one just dents the wood, all right, and a ton of the energy is lost in this displacement, denting the wood. So, you know, just obvious answers to questions, and they just couldn't care. I mean, this physics and science isn't important. They're just trying to discredit me because I'm somehow a threat to the universe, because I don't believe what they believe. It's just such a pile of nonsense. And they'll lie and cheat to do it. That's the bottom line. They won't accept any responsibility for their obligation to be careful, to make sure that they're not exaggerating or overstating the case. They don't care about any of those scientific, which should be scientific disciplines. And look, science itself, as I'm demonstrating, is crap. I mean, I just did a video on this muon experiment that's from the 60s. It's been around a long time. It's used as a reference, proving Einstein right, and it's theoretical nonsense. It's absolute junk. Okay, it's a written up in a paper, in a journal experiment, and it's logically nonsensical. And can I get anybody to defend it, respond? No. So, I mean, this is a shitty environment to have to argue in. The degreed physicists are all cowards because they all have something to lose. Okay, they don't want to lose this argument, especially to me. Okay, that would be really humiliating to lose a physics argument to me. Oh, so they're all too chicken to show up. And as I've demonstrated publicly, I've offered them great deals of money, up to $4,000, just to acknowledge I'm making these arguments and that they don't have any counter argument. Just to acknowledge that. Just to sit there, and they don't even have to play a 5-minute video at worst, and just point out how they either have a counter argument or they don't. Just fess up that these arguments exist, and that the fact is they don't have any reasonable explanation. If I say to you, why hasn't NASA, with 400 times better resolution, you don't need an eclipse, why haven't they redone the Eddington experiment? It takes 5 minutes with a mediocre camera. One of the most famous experiments in the history of physics, the whole foundation for Einstein's popularity. It really should be proven. They really should do the scientific method and prove that this experiment actually works, that it actually does happen, that this event they say is true actually does happen. Nothing. You can do it. You can do it using Jupiter from space. From space, you don't even have to look at the sun. Amazing bullshit. And they won't even admit that is not very good looking science. Science shouldn't look like that. Science shouldn't have an unrepeated experiment as a foundation. And it certainly shouldn't say things like an 8-pound bowling ball going twice as fast can knock down twice as many pins as a 16-pound ball going half as fast. They shouldn't say these things until they can show these things. And that lack of integrity, that none of these fanatics will in any way admit that simple fact, that science should look better than that. Science should do better than that. Science shouldn't look anything like a dogmatic religion. It should look like a well-proven, deliberate effort to find the truth. And it don't look that way. All right, so I think that's probably enough. Maybe I'll go pause. I'll go see if there's any comments worth commenting on his latest exaggerated video. Okay, where he's claiming kinetic energy is being proven when no, it's not. All right. Well, we do have dumb comments, so why not read them? I wouldn't say it's king. Thermal energy and potential energy are part of the trio brand, so whatever that even means. Again, there's no such thing as potential energy. It's just kind of a silly way to describe something. They're all active sources. Gravity is an active stream of energy. You can stick your finger in it and collect it. Okay, just like a water stream. It's an active, it's not a potential. Okay, Niagara Falls isn't a demonstration of potential. It's an active gravity pushing the water. Okay, just too stupid. Anyway, enough talk. Can draft admit all it really boils down to is that the faster and heavier something is, the more motion energy. So it's just so stupid. I mean, you're the one saying Newton was wrong when he said exactly that. Yes, faster makes it more energy, heavier makes it more energy, but in completely equal proportions. There's no special voltage squared. There's no voltage squared. There's just amps and volts. There's just mass and velocity. You're the whack job saying somehow faster is more effective than heavier. That if I make something heavier, that don't work. But if I make something faster, oh yeah, I get a whole bunch of benefit. You're the one saying 1,000 atoms going 1 mile an hour is 1,000 times less energy than one atom going 1,000 miles an hour. You're the imbecile saying that, defending that. A speedy freight train has more motion energy than a slow-moving bicycle. Not if the bicycle weighs as much as the freight train. 2 freight trains. If I double the mass, you're saying that the double velocity wins. Again, how many times can I say this? Do you have any experimental evidence demonstrating that if I take the 5 mass, proportional, 5 mass going 10 velocity against the 10 mass going 5 velocity, do you have any evidence anywhere on the face of this earth demonstrating that the 5 mass going 10 has twice the energy of the 10 mass going 5? Do you have any shred of evidence? And don't you think you should have it after 350 years of saying it? Don't you think you should have some experiment where you actually took a 5 mass and a 10 mass and you gave this one half the velocity and you gave this one twice the velocity and you let them go on a string, and they went at a constant velocity, and then all of a sudden the string runs out? What do you think happens? I mean, by your theory, this one has twice the energy. It should pull this right with it. Do you think that's going to happen? I know it's not, okay? And I know you're such a pathetic creature to sit there and imply that I have missed something or that my intelligence is low because I don't believe your nonsense that you have zero evidence for. Oh, amazing. Mass and speed both contribute. The whole point is they don't contribute evenly in your theory. In your theory, they don't make even contributions. Oh, amazing. To the energetic performance of an object in motion. Gee, you're just such an idiot. A colossal idiot. All right, so Gosling says king over momentum in energy terms. Dun, 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 dun. Fake, phony, lie. Okay. If it were just mass and velocity, then he would be right, and Newton would be right, and Galileo would be right, and Descartes would be right. Happy he is not. I'm perfectly happy that I know what I'm doing, and I'm just really disappointed that, frankly, the world's full of lying cowards. That the average human is a scum shit. All right, that you fuckers just believe shit, and you don't have the guts to defend it. Okay, with reasoning. You made a video where, I mean, every single diagram I drew was about something in gravity moving a constantly changing velocity, and then said, well, if it's going at constant speed. I mean, too idiotic. The way you just cheat every argument that's ever been made. You're such a disgusting Brozosian. All right, to get nature's empirical results. So he's calling this the king's evidence. Even, the king couldn't refuse this great evidence he's provided. It's so perfect and beautiful and pristine. Oh, these people are such liars. All right, if you round your half-mass probe to 7 ounces, the momentum on both become close to each other. I don't even know what he's trying to say there. Your block of wood tilts because of angular momentum. No, it tilts because it's lifting mass. Okay, that's it. Angular momentum is irrelevant. The reason why it tips is because it's lifting mass and then moving it sideways. On the first version of my slide, I made a mistake because, these slide things. On my small screen, I looked at the shadow of the needle. Oh, whatever. He's just such an idiot. Why would anybody even talk to a rask of sounding pandemic? John tilts because the kinetic energy transferred from the pendulum. So again, he's using this term kinetic energy when no, all that's happening is the mass and a velocity is hitting the pendulum. Hitting the wood. What do you mean similar momenta? The MV is greatly different between the two. How is the MV different? Sorry, I don't understand. How the MV is the same. He's too stupid. All right, let's see. The momentum is 26% too high, but the energy is 25% too low. Well, his outcome results aren't consistent with kinetic energy, so yeah, he doesn't win. It's not consistent with momentum either, but that's just because he's fucking hitting a big giant piece of wood and not recognizing that when you're transferring mass and velocity and you're going to use an experiment where you're lifting something in gravity, you have to recognize the simple truth that you can do it the hard way or you can do it the easy way. You lift something in gravity fast, you did it the easy way. You lift it slow, you did it the hard way. Again, no, NASA doesn't take off on their rocket engines and just kind of just float around in the atmosphere trying to get up into orbit because they'd have to refuel 7,643 times. They try to get there as fast as possible so they don't have to use as much fuel. And, they would lift off even faster than they do if it wasn't for the atmosphere. The atmosphere gets in the way, and so they have to wait until they get out of the thick atmosphere, and then they can do that thing called throttle up, which means put the engines at 100%. Because they can't do it in the atmosphere because their spaceship will fall apart trying to plow through the atmosphere. Yeah, look, it doesn't. This is all just physics, physics, physics everywhere. So again, we could go back to car crashes. You don't even have any car crash evidence that twice the speed is 4 times the damage. You don't have any car crash evidence 3 times the speed is 9 times the damage. Nothing. You have nothing defending this nonsense, and yet they talk so arrogant. I mean, it's so unscientific. All right. So enough of a video. So I will put the, I think the next one will be the measuring the mass of the electron. I'll put that up on the website, the 60s video. And again, I'll just point out my critique, okay, of their analysis. And how they, again, it is sort of engineered, okay? The fact is all these experiments, they can see, you can find the points where they've tweaked the experiment. And in the electron example, I'm going to just ask, you got to ask, okay, so they inject a bunch of hydrogen gas. It's not a vacuum. What's the hydrogen doing? What's its role to play in the experiment? Yes, it makes the electrons visible, but is it also doing something else? I mean, these are reasonable questions that scientists don't ask. It's just, just preach the dogma, okay? Jesus walked on the water. We don't need a video. Just believe. He rose the dead. Just believe. He grew a guy a new arm. Oh, wait a minute. He never did that, did he? Yeah, no, he never did that miracle. Fuck. I just hate this planet. Hate it here. I just hate it. You people are such pieces of fucking steaming shit. Get what you deserve, frankly. Which is, you're heading right for that brick wall, so that will be what we all deserve, being human. Crushing death. Okay, till the next time and such. Boiled in our own bullshit.